Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I will teach you guys what the difference between ipairs, pairs, and next, because they are different ways of looping a table. Okay, so we will open up a script so we can talk about them together. So I have my script opened up, and we'll call this script when to use these guys. Okay, because you guys know what the guys are. Okay, the boys. Alright, so the first thing we want to talk about is ipairs. So we'll talk about ipairs. So ipairs should be used for arrays, and pretty much arrays are for a particular thing. So array means a table filled with a particular thing. Okay, so that means the table is filled with the same thing. Okay, so if you have a table, local MyTable, and it's filled with the same thing, so it's filled with numbers, then you could do that. Or if it's a table filled with parts, okay, local my next table, okay, so the second table, well, we have parts. We have workspace.baseplate, you know, and then we have, you know, another part. We're gonna put a part in here, part, and then we got workspace.part. You can do that as well. So it's the same thing, alright? And so yeah, these are all particular things. It's a table filled with the same thing, even strings as well. So you get my point. But the problem with using it for parts is that parts can sometimes turn nil or non-existent. So if you loop through a table and somehow the base plate got destroyed, then this would become nil. So base plate would be nil. And so when that happens, the for I, v, and pairs and ipairs loop would break. So that's why I don't recommend using ipairs for parts, because parts can be broken unless if you know for sure your parts won't be broken. Okay, so if you know that you won't be destroying your parts in any way and it's anchored into workspace, then you can use ipairs, and you're going to know that ipairs won't be broken because you have the parts and you know they're not going to turn nil. Okay, so that's the one thing about using ipairs with parts, because parts can turn nil. So the next thing we want to talk about is next. And I think, based on my experience, I believe you should use next for fast loops. Okay, very fast loops. Okay, that's when I see it the most. And I think that's the only time you should do that. So it would look like this for I variable in pair and next, and then you have your folder. So this would be in a loop, and let's just say workspace get children. Let's do that. So that's what a next would look like. And usually you would put a next in a while loop, okay, in a fast while loop. I recommend that you use next for a fast while loop. So you would have usually seen next in heartbeats and run service. Run service is a very fast loop. Or this one, while wait do, because this is looping very fast. And so what next does is it gets the next item in the table. Okay, so it gets the first item, and then it goes down, and then it gets the second item, and then it goes down again. So for example, it gets part, and then the for loop ends, and then it gets to the bottom. Okay, so it's gonna print got part or something, you know, got part, it got the item, and so when it goes again, it's gonna get the next item in the index, so it goes to 2. So this pretty much loops for one item at a time. Pretty much next loops for one item in the table. So it's great for saving space. If you use something like pairs, that's more cost effective on your system, so not much people use that, especially if you use it in run service, because pairs is gonna do it all at once, and that's just really fast, and that's gonna really ruin your performance. So definitely I recommend you use next for fast loops. That's usually when people would use next. And definitely for workspace, you wouldn't want to use ipairs. Okay, imagine if you used ipairs, something could get destroyed in workspace, and workspace is filled with many different things. You're gonna have to check if variable is a. So usually in a loop you would see if variable is a, and then you would have you know, base part. Okay, you want to check if it's a base part. Then so if you have this, okay, if you have if variable is a base pair or anything like that. If you have to check if it's something, then do not use ipairs. Okay, ipairs is for a particular thing, like we talked about. Okay, so we covered next. Next basically gets one item at a time in each cycle. So it gets one item at a time. So it gets the first index, then it gets to the next index when it gets called again. So it's a very efficient way in a fast loop. And it does the job well if you're using run service. And it doesn't overkill your system. Okay, so the final thing is pairs. And I recommend you use pairs for dictionaries. And that's pretty much everything. Dictionaries are pretty much tables filled with multiple different values that are very complex. Okay, so you have a local MyTable, then you have like a table filled with another table. You could have tables inside of tables, then you have like workspace.baseplate, things that are very opposite from each other. That's completely different items. So you have another table inside of a table, then over here you have like particle emitter, but like that's gonna error because we didn't identify what particle emitter is. We'll just make that a string. So you have so much different items in here, and then you have false. All of a sudden you have like a boolean value, a false. Okay, so that is a dictionary, something that's very random, that's very complex. It's filled with many different variables that are not a particular thing. So that's when you use pairs. Okay, so pairs is always going to be your backbone when you're unsure if it's going to be a particular thing. Okay, so you would use pairs for something like this because you know that it's filled with many different things. You will also use pairs with something like workspace get children, okay, because it's filled with many different things and it can return a nil value. So you can also have nil in here because it won't stop at nil. You wouldn't want to use this for ipairs, definitely not, because it would stop at something like false or nil. Or ipairs can sometimes skip something because there's so much things that are not of the same category. Okay, but for example, you can use ipairs for things like tables and with tables. So if you have a list of the same item like tables, then it's okay to do that if you know that that you're gonna be just calling one thing. You know what I mean? So it's not too complex. Just make sure you don't use ipairs for something that has multiple different things, and make sure you don't use ipairs for something that would return nil. Okay, that's why I don't recommend using ipairs for something like pathfinding service, because pathfinding service can return a part that could possibly be non-existent or nil. Okay, when you think of pathfinding service, it creates waypoints for the zombie to walk at, and if you don't have those waypoints there, they're going to return nil and the ipairs would break. That's why I don't recommend ipairs in pathfinding scripts. Okay, I've seen it many times, and that just makes the zombie stutter step and all that. So I do not recommend you guys do ipairs with pathfinding service, because there will always be standpoints when the waypoints would be destroyed and the ipairs would just break, so the zombie would be stutter stepping. And I'll make a video on that too. I'll show you guys the correct way of doing pathfinding service in another video. But that's pretty much it for this video. This is pretty much everything else, or anything you are unsure about. Okay, so this is when you would want to use each. Just copy these notes down. Ipairs is for a particular thing, or arrays. That's the same thing as arrays. And next is just for fast loops, and pairs is for dictionaries, something filled with many different things. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. You guys have a nice day now. Subscribe and take care, bros.